There's been a large amount of activity within the Hytale community recently, and with the clock ticking for big reveals, a beta and maybe even a release, the Hytale community is slowly starting to hype up again. Of course, there's still some time to go, and while release plans may not have been drafted yet, there's a lot that must be done to guarantee a successful launch for Hytale. The release of Cyberpunk 2077 is the epitome of what Hypixel Studios must avoid with Hytale's launch, but with so much pressure and expectations on all sides, how exactly are they meant to do this? Today we will be exploring the vital mistakes made by CD Projekt Red, how they affected the launch of Cyberpunk, and what Hypixel should do to avoid them. My name is Duck, you're watching Hycast, and let's get into it. CD Projekt made literally hundreds of mistakes with the launch of Cyberpunk 2077, which was surprising for the trusted and well-regarded studio. They continuously made promises they couldn't keep, disappointed their fans time and time again, and even misinformed console players about the state of their game, to the point that it got pulled from stores for being borderline unplayable. So, what went wrong? Although officially announced way in advance back in 2018, during E3, Cyberpunk had targeted a release during April 2020. However, as with many games, this didn't quite go to plan, resulting in a number of largely unwelcome delays. CD Projekt ended up promising no more delays in October ahead of their November the 19th launch, which didn't quite exactly turn out as planned either. The game quickly ended up being pushed back one more time to December the 10th. The best part of it all, it still wasn't enough. Many people could have gotten over the delayed release of Cyberpunk, and even with the unkept promises. Yet, despite the broken trust, failed promises, and consecutive delays, they could still not deliver. It turns out CD Projekt bit off way more than they could chew, and the innovative, crazy, new exciting game of Cyberpunk was too much to handle even for some of the world's best developers. The game released in a bit of a messy state. While playable on higher end systems, the game suffered performance issues, glitches, and countless bugs that were smeared all over the game during its launch. So, what is it Hytale could learn here? While Hytale may look like the polar opposite of Cyberpunk, those games actually have a lot in common, and there are valuable lessons to be had in regards to hype, expectation, and promises. Both games have been highly anticipated and both have been silver-lined with huge expectations from the first announcement. Expectations which are allowed to go unchecked and undelivered on in Cyberpunk's case. This is a mistake Hypixel must not make. For Hytale to have a successful launch, the developers should not promise an exact date until the game is ready. 2021 has already been defined as the launch year, meaning there is a large window for unexpected delays, so they can be dealt with. Hopefully, the game can be released this year, but if it must be delayed, the developers must be very careful with how they set a new release date in order to avoid disaster. For example, a critical mistake in the case of a hypothetical Hytale delay to 2022 would be setting a precise release date of, let's say, the 26th of February. If Hytale could not meet this new deadline and Hytale was to be delayed further and or be in an unready state, we would see similar backlash as Cyberpunk received. Avoiding this is simple. Don't set a release date until the game is ready to release. Don't assume the game will be ready in X weeks, unless it will be ready in 2 to 3 days. Use the beta to its full potential to fix any bugs, extend it if necessary. For the 1 millionth time you will hear this quote: "A delayed game is eventually good, but a rushed game is forever bad." Another example of what not to do on the release of a game is once again exhibited by CD Projekt. CD Projekt had said that Cyberpunk ran surprisingly well on last generation consoles, which, in a way, it did. However, running at completely unplayable frame rates on a console that you wouldn't expect the game to run on isn't really what people had in mind when CD Projekt said this. Hypixel needs to be a little careful on this release, carefully stating what can and can't run the game, particularly since they've described the game as relatively easy to run, and that Minecraft capable hardware should also run Hytale. If this is no longer the case, or if official servers can leave you in as little as 5 FPS, it would be better for everyone if it was clarified ahead of time. While the devs have so far done a good job in avoiding promises they cannot keep, it is still clear that there is room for improvement in regards to estimating how long things could take and tackling unforeseen challenges. While we in no means expect them to fully master this, after all, big studios fail at it all the time, It would be best for everyone if this was brought up in greater detail, so everyone could understand. Do you know what else would be better if it was clarified? Our Discord server, of course. That's right, you've reached another segue where we politely ask you to subscribe and all that other jazz. In all seriousness though, we would like to thank you for the recent support. We put a lot of work into our videos to bring you the best Hytale content we can, and it's nice to see all of you enjoy it. Let's keep this going, we're getting closer to some pretty epic milestones. Generally, the Discord right now is where all the super cool people are, and we love talking about Hytale and especially Kweebecs, so please, be sure to check it out when you can. The link can be found in the description, and with that said, let's talk about some bugs. Cyberpunk's launch was greatly impacted by bugs, ranging from crashes that required a reinstall for the game to work again, to NPCs walking through seemingly solid objects. For many people, the game was downright unplayable. The game was clearly not ready for launch on release. Coupled with the fact to actually play the game you would need to shell out for a next-gen console, or have a pretty substantial PC to have a great experience, it is evident that CD Projekt rushed this launch, clearly choosing to get the game out without further delay than ship a complete game. CD Projekt backed themselves into a corner with the launch of Cyberpunk, where they could either continue and delay the game or release an unfinished game. This was a lose-lose situation, one which, although Cyberpunk as a game had an overall positive reception, ended up being an overall loss for CD Projekt, with the launch and number of refunds being less than stellar for the company. The dire situation of the launch can be illustrated best by the substantial discounts being offered by most major retailers for the game. CD Projekt's botched launch illustrates and represents all of the mistakes that Hytale must avoid, particularly if it's launched as a paid game. It is critical for Hypixel to launch a complete game, even if it means delays. Although, as demonstrated by other games such as EA's Anthem, it is still important to be punctual for a game's release, or the game's reception may not go as planned. This is a balance that game developers must get right. On the final release, game-breaking bugs and such must be ironed out. A beta would really help Hypixel iron these out, and would also help reignite any hype lost from delays, allowing people to have a more in-depth picture of the game. With Hypixel promising a beta at some point before release, this is already a big factor in avoiding a fate like Cyberpunk's. Yet, despite all of this, not everything that befell Cyberpunk was CD Projekt's fault. A lot of the blame for Cyberpunk's lackluster launch performance falls on the community. Cyberpunk was hailed as the best game of all time before its launch, which is just an impossible target to meet. Where Cyberpunk as a game, when you don't take into account the bugs, is objectively a good game. It isn't perfect, and it isn't the best game of all time, but it's fun and well made. Meeting lofty expectations like Cyberpunk's is practically impossible, and when a game is held in such esteem, every little detail will be held against it. There really isn't much that developers can do. This is what Hytale has to avoid. On announcement, many people proclaimed that Hytale would replace or even kill Minecraft. However, being hailed as the next Minecraft was an expectation that would have been incredibly hard to meet. But thankfully, the community expectations seem to have settled on a more stable level, with the majority of people accepting Hytale as its own game, and not as a Minecraft killer, so to speak. The fan base accepting that Hytale isn't a game destined to replace Minecraft, but a game to compete with Minecraft in a somewhat friendly rivalry is a crucial step in preventing Hytale from suffering a similar fate to that of Cyberpunk's. And who knows, maybe both games can grow to be even better for everyone as a result. Overall, for Hytale to have a successful launch, Hypixel must avoid the mistakes that CD Projekt made. They must keep to the schedule they set and avoid as many delays as possible, while still delivering a quality product. All the while keeping all of the features they have promised. Understandably, this is no mean feat, as the game industry is a tough beast to tame, but with an upcoming beta and a supportive community, Hytale looks to be set to do just that. If you're interested in when we think the Hytale beta will release, click the video on the left of your screen. Alternatively, if you're interested in how we think the Hytale community will shape up, we have a video on that as well. Thank you so much for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a wonderful day.